And welcome back. As we now go ahead and continue our next lesson to C, let's go ahead and take a look at how we can do strings. So strings in C are a little bit different than how we might be used to handling them. Because while strings are used for storing text and characters, in C, we don't actually have a string type to easily create string variables. Instead, we have to use the char type and create an array of characters to make a string in C. So, for example, char greetings equals hello world. So if we want to output the string, you can use the printf function together with the format specifier, %f, to tell C that we're now working with strings. And so if we do char greetings, hello world, printf, mod s, greetings. So let's look at how we can access and modify our strings. Since strings are arrays in C, you can access a string by referring to its index number inside square brackets. This prints the first character, or 0, in the index, in greetings. So char greetings equals hello world, printf, mod C, greetings, 0. Now, you'll notice here, though, we are using mod C and not mod S because we're returning in a value of that array. And remember, that array is actually a character type, so that's why we have to use mod C here. So if we want to change, though, the value of a specific character string, we're going to refer to the index number and use single quotes. So char greetings equals hello world, greetings of 0 equals quote C. And if we print out that, we're going to outprint hello world instead of hello world. Now, if we want to loop through a string, we can do this using a for loop. We have seen this a little bit. So char car name Volvo in I for I is equals 0, I is less than 5, I plus plus, printf, mod C, new line, car name of I. What's it going to do? It's going to print out each of the characters on a new line. Now, we can also use technically the size of formula instead of manually writing the size array into the loop condition to make this loop much more sustainable. Now, there is another way of creating strings besides what we've looked at. What we've done so far is use what's known as a string literal to create a string variable, and this is the easiest way to create a string. However, you can also create a string with a set of characters. So I could have wrote out char greetings as, you can see as follows, HELLO space WO, and you get the picture. Now, this is still a perfectly valid way because remember, it's an array of characters. However, you do notice there is also a /0 at the end. Well, the reason why there's a /0 here is because this is the null terminating character and has to be included when creating strings using this method. This is C's way of saying, hey, this is the end of the string. And while this is not necessarily a more common way, of course, the way we saw previously is a much more common way of handling this. This can be a perfectly valid approach if you want to use this implementation. Now, C does have some escape characters that we can use besides the ones that we've already seen. So, for example, if you want to do certain things within your strings that aren't going to cause issues, you can do like a single quote, a double quote, or backslash very easily. And these, of course, are very familiar to us from most of our other languages. Now, strings also have functions, which can add a lot of power and functionality to our program. So these powerful functions do have a caveat. You have to use the include the string.h header file in your program, which is just #include string.h. And the first of those functions is string length. So if we want to get the length of string, we can just use the strlen function. All right, so you can see here in this example, we are using a printf. We're using mod D of strlen of alphabet. Alphabet, of course, is the name of the character array right here. And that, of course, would give us the value of how many characters are in here. Now, while strings are arrays of characters, we want to use the strlen instead of the size of function. And why is that? Well, it's important to note that that size of will always return the memory size in bytes and not the actual string length. Because, we saw this when we dealt with things like characters, or, when we looked at integers and stuff like that. We had to, of course, divide out the number of characters and the size length. Well, the strings, it's a little bit harder to handle that because, remember, we don't necessarily have that set finite value. So that's why we want to use the strlen function instead. If we want to concatenate strings, we can use the strcat function. You can't just use, string 1 and plus string 2, kind of like what we're used to doing. Instead, we have to say like strcat, and that will allow us to join those two strings and store it back in string 1. If we want to copy strings, we can use the strcopy function, providing that the other string is large enough to hold the values of that first string. So here we're, of course, copying string 1 of hello world into string 2. You notice that they're both of size 20. All right, and that's important because we want to make sure that there's enough room to be able to hold that data. And then, of course, we can compare strings. Compare strings are great to use to see, for example, if things are in a certain order. So we can use the strcmp function. This, of course, is going to be pretty simple. It's going to return 0 if the two strings are equal. Otherwise, it's going to return us a value that is not 0. So in here we have 3 strings. We have hello, hello, and hi. So in this first part here, you can see us comparing str1, str2, and give us the result, which is 0, which tells us that the values are equal. And in our second line here, we can see we're doing strcomp str1 and str3, which in this case is a return -4. And this simply just tells us that these strings are not equal. And so let's go ahead and take a quick demonstration of some string functionality here. So here I have a print statement that simply says we're demonstrating string functionality. I've set up a character array that says hello universe. I'm going to go ahead and print out that string. Then I'm going to get the length of string. I'm storing it into a variable here in this example because sometimes it's easier to have that in case I want to use that for a different functionality later on. Maybe I want to use that for something like, for example, a loop. And then, of course, I'm displaying out the length of the string. And then I have a second string right here that simply says it's me. And I'm going to concatenate those two strings together, and then I'm going to print that back out. So if we go ahead and give this a run, you can see it says demonstrating string functionality. We're displaying the string, hello universe. We're displaying the length of the string, which in this case is 15. And then of course, we concatenated those two strings there, and now it says hello universe, it's me. So that should give you a good quick introduction to how to work with strings in C. It's again a little different than what we might be used to,